look around you. This is code red for Americans. From extreme shortages in our nation's stores, to exploding prices all over the country, to violence and crime running rampant in our streets, every day brings a new crisis to our doorstep. As Fox News reported, Biden's inhumane open border policies devastate Americans. The New York Times warned, America's homelessness crisis is getting worse. Even CNN admitted, Biden looks powerless as crises crest around him. And while it may seem like every different crisis is completely unrelated, one man is convinced these are the symptoms of a nation teetering on the brink of collapse. His name is Jim Rickards. He spent more than 40 years working with the highest-ranking officials in Washington, D.C. He has deep connections to the U.S. intelligence community. He's given advice to the Pentagon, the CIA, and even members inside former President Trump's cabinet. And yet, not once in his 40 years has he ever predicted such a catastrophic event was potentially just over the horizon. One he believes could end the American economy as we know it in the next 6 to 12 months. And in just a moment, he's going to reveal his full prediction, including the only way he knows for Americans to prepare and even prosper over the coming weeks. So pay close attention. Turn off all distractions. This man is stepping forward in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, my name is Jim Rickards, and in my hand is brand new proof of what could go down as the biggest economic collapse in American history. And when you see what I have to show you, you'll understand why no executive order from the president, no new legislation from Congress, no rate hike by the Fed alone can fix this mess. I'm talking about an economic super collapse totaling $85 trillion, the likes of which the world has never seen. During the Great Depression, Americans endured a $1.1 trillion economic collapse. If I'm right, based on what's inside this envelope, we could be staring down a collapse nearly 85 times larger. I know that sounds unbelievable, even unimaginable, but I'm going to show you proof, and you'll see why I'm predicting this super collapse could end our economy the way we know it in the next 6 to 12 months. In fact, if I'm right, and the worst of what I'm predicting comes to pass, I'm going to show you why Business Insider warns grocery stores could run out of food in 3 days, not 3 weeks, 3 days. This is truly terrifying stuff. You're also going to see why I'm concerned about Russia and China potentially launching economic attacks that could devastate regular American citizens. If you have any money in the banks or in the stock market, these kinds of attacks could impact you directly, and in more ways than one. When you see what I'm predicting, you'll understand just how close to the edge our economy is teetering, and I'll make sure you see the 3 danger zones that I'm worried about collapsing most. Already the nation is at a breaking point. Forbes calls it the new era of layoffs, hiring freezes, stocks and crypto market crashes. Inflation is crushing Americans, and many economists are talking about recession. It's why Elon Musk emailed employees saying he had a super bad feeling regarding the economy, and why CNBC wrote, Jamie Dimon says, brace yourself for an economic hurricane. Make no mistake, even if I'm wrong about the worst case scenario, the forces driving this collapse have already begun. As far back as 2021, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce President Suzanne Clark told CNN Business, the situation is real and it's getting worse by the day. But if you still think I'm just blowing smoke, please understand, I've made predictions on this scale before, and I've been right more times than I can count. In 2008, I predicted the U.S. housing collapse. No one believed me at the time. 3 weeks later, Lehman Brothers went belly up and markets crashed, devastating the retirement savings of millions of Americans. Then in 2016, the experts were shocked when I predicted Brexit. The media said it could never happen until I was proved right. Then, despite 99% of polls showing the opposite, I stood outside Trump Tower the night before the 2016 election and declared Donald Trump would be our next president. Then in late 2021, several months before the first shots were fired in Ukraine, I alerted my readers this war was an almost certainty. But what I fear could happen if I'm right about this economic super collapse could be far worse. Based on the proof I have inside this envelope, it could take our country a decade or longer to turn around and recover. And while you'll never hear Joe Biden admit that, Did you know his own Department of Defense gave him 64 recommendations to ensure economic and national security? Look, all my research points to the crisis arriving at your doorstep soon, whether you're ready or not. And most Americans have no idea what's at stake. It's why I've dropped everything to put together a total preparation package for this economic supercollapse and a blueprint for Americans to follow to protect themselves. It starts with what's inside this envelope. Because of the gravity of this situation, I'm on a mission to distribute this information far and wide to every American who will accept my help. Why would I do that? Because as a former advisor to both the CIA and the Pentagon, I feel obligated to warn you that doing nothing could make your life far worse in the coming days. I've built my career predicting events that most people thought were unthinkable. I've been advising the U.S. government on matters of national security for years now. In the late 1990s, for example, I worked side by side with members of the Federal Reserve Bank to save America from a $1.3 trillion banking crisis. It could have destroyed the U.S. economy, but thanks to my work, it never happened. I've given advice to members of former President Trump's cabinet. I've been inside the West Wing of the White House, the U.S. Treasury, and the boardroom at the Federal Reserve. And unlike most insiders, I've actually shared my warnings with the American public on multiple TV channels. It's why in the past, people who have ignored me were blindsided, and those who listened were prepared. Look, I'm not saying I have a crystal ball because I don't, but I know having a head start on these big events allowed me to personally prepare my family. I'll share how, so you can take the same steps in just a second, including several steps to take with your money. But understand that what you decide to do today could have a huge impact on your life over the coming days and weeks. America is unraveling each day and fast. Unfortunately, I know most Americans will ignore these warning signs and just hope for the best. And by the time they wake up to reality, it will be too late for them. But I don't want that to be you. So if you want the same details I'm sharing with my family about what to expect from this $85 trillion economic super collapse, you need to get access to the information that's inside this envelope now. That's because what's inside this envelope is information you'll never hear being talked about by the president or by members of Congress or by the mainstream media. It's information from me that no other former government insider I know is willing to reveal the way I am. That's because the last thing the elites want is a premature panic from regular people like you. They'd rather try and control the crowd. But I feel a moral obligation to prepare you, even if the truth is hard to hear and frightening. That's why today I'm going to go through 3 danger zones in our economy that I'm worried about most if I'm right about the super collapse. Then after I've shown you the proof, I'm going to give you a chance today to access this information inside this envelope and learn what I know, so you can see why I'm predicting the end of the American economy the way we know it in the next 6 to 12 months. Like I said, I've never released this information to the public before, but today I'm giving you that chance. That's because, as my fellow Americans, I believe you deserve to know the truth about what I fear could happen to the way we get our food, our energy, and our medicine. These are the 3 danger zones under threat of economic collapse I'm concerned about most, and I'm going to talk about each one now. Danger Zone 1, America's food supply. According to the CDC's website, a disaster can easily disrupt the food supply at any time. In the event of disaster or emergency, they advise Americans to have at least a 3-day supply of food. But have you ever asked yourself, what happens if multiple disasters hit our food supply chains simultaneously? Just look at what's happened so far this year. In early 2022, USA Today reported shortages at grocery stores across the country have grown more acute in recent weeks as Omicron continues to spread and winter storms have piled on. Then, Putin decided to roll Russian tanks into Ukraine, igniting yet another disaster. As the UN told BBC, Russia's invasion of Ukraine could soon cause a global food crisis that may last for years. That's because practically 1/3 of the world's wheat exports come from Russia and Ukraine. It's why just a few weeks later, Bloomberg wrote, U.S. bread makers fear soaring costs as turmoil engulfs the wheat trade. Of course, wheat is hardly the only thing stores need to sell bread. What about the plastic or paper the bread is wrapped in? What about the ovens used to bake the bread? What about the truckers who bring the bread to the store? I believe a disruption is coming that will deprive Americans of basic food items like bread, eggs, milk, meat, cheese, and more. Because of intense political tensions in the country, rising prices, and intense work schedules to meet delivery deadlines under the supply chain crunch, I believe it's very likely that we will see a long-haul trucker strike in the next 6 to 12 months. I believe that strike would last 2 weeks or more. And do you know what will happen when those long-haul truckers don't go to work for a week? Business Insider reported that when that happens, grocery stores would run out of food in 3 days. Then what? Is the CDC going to tell you they've updated the 3-day emergency guidelines on their website? It will be too late for you at that point. That's why, in just a minute, I'm going to tell you what I've been buying to protect my family before extreme food shortages hit later this year. I'll even tell you how long you should be prepared in a food emergency, because trust me, it's a lot longer than 3 days. If you want to ignore my advice after hearing what I'm doing, that's your decision. But I'm not going to sit on my hands and hope. And I don't want you to feel like that's your only choice either. Especially when you see that our food supply relies on another supply I'm also deeply concerned about. Danger zone number 2, America's energy supply. See, even after a trucker strike, the only way the trucks can deliver our food is if they have enough gas to run on. And right now, we're in the middle of the worst energy crisis since the 1970s. And not just because of rising prices at the pump. As you may know, in the aftermath of that oil crisis, our government built something called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR. For a worst-case scenario, we all hope never comes to pass, over the last 50 years, it's grown steadily from administration to administration, having recently hit 564 million barrels of oil. And then suddenly, everything changed. As NBC wrote, under Biden, U.S. oil reserves to drop by 40%. The article continues, the number will fall to 384.6 million barrels, a level not recorded since 1984. The scary part of this is that the SPR is not actually meant to last this very long. According to one estimate I found before Biden's latest action, it could supply us with oil for about 1.5 years without being replenished. Of course, now that we have 40% less oil, that supply would run out 40% faster. I believe that instead of that oil reserve lasting us a year and a half, it will last us less than a year. I also believe it's extremely likely we could use our Strategic Petroleum Reserve to help Europe. This isn't on anyone's radar because most Americans aren't thinking about the boomerang effects of our economy's recent actions. But because of sanctions we imposed on Russia, it's likely that our European allies will run out of oil. When they do, the U.S. will offer to supply them with even more of our oil and natural gas to bail them out. You may think that's far-fetched, but this is exactly what's happening right now. The Washington Times just reported that President Biden has sent 5 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve abroad. And I predict he's going to send far more oil abroad at a time when prices are rising and we're running out of oil. In the process, he's going to destroy everyday Americans' daily lives. As Bloomberg wrote, U.S. monthly oil shipments to Europe climbed to the highest level since 2016. It's why overseas, the English-run BBC reported recently, Russia sanctions, can the world cope without its oil and gas? This is a dangerous and evolving situation. That's why this envelope contains information about what I fear Putin is planning next, so you aren't blindsided. If you have any money in the banks or in the stock market, this could impact you directly. And if you think all this is just too far-fetched, please understand this isn't the first time I've warned my readers about what Russia could do to our energy supply. A decade ago, in my best-selling book, Currency Wars, I wrote, Russia's use of natural gas as a geopolitical weapon goes beyond threats. Then earlier this year, I tweeted this. And while the situation surrounding the way we get our food and energy is bad, it's this next danger zone that keeps me up at night. Danger zone number 3, America's medicine supply. Just like trucks need gasoline to deliver our food, the only way our economy runs is if the people who run it, the truckers and everyone else, all have access to necessary drugs and medicine. Up until recently, that may have sounded like a foregone conclusion. And government officials might have reminded us about the other strategic reserve in our country. I'm talking about the Strategic National Stockpile, America's largest reserve of drugs and medical equipment. But then COVID hit. As NBC News wrote, the country's largest repository of drugs and medical equipment is designed to be used as a stopgap, not a solution, during emergencies. Fighting the COVID-19 pandemic was just one emergency that taxed the system. But I believe another catalyst event will be breaking the medical system altogether. Based on my research, it will likely be because of the U.S. officially entering a geopolitical conflict. Rosemary Gibson, a senior advisor on healthcare, warned government officials about just that back in 2019, saying, medicines can be used as a weapon of war against the United States. Think about it. We're the world's largest economy. That means we have a bullseye on our back. What second largest world economy do you think might have an interest in taking us down? Of course, I'm talking about China. Sound too hard to believe? Well, did you know we get nearly half of all our penicillin from China? I doubt most Americans realize it, but this was stated publicly in a report published in 2019. I believe a coming conflict with China, it could be another trade war, internal conflict within China, or even a serious conflict militarily between us and China, will lead to a major breakdown in the critical drug supply to the U.S. China has already had discussions about cutting us off. During the Chinese National People's Conference in 2019, it was suggested, should China reduce the exports, the medical systems of some Western countries will not run well. Forget about just keeping the medical system afloat. We're talking about 300 million Americans who don't even realize how often they might need this life-saving drug. Since 1942, penicillin has saved the lives of more than 200 million people. We don't even think about all the stuff it's used to treat today because penicillin and antibiotics make these things so treatable. Not having it would be like being transported back 100 years ago, when catching something like scarlet fever could easily result in death. If that were the case today, how long do you think it would be before our food and energy and every other supply chain would grind to a halt? That's why this envelope also contains information about 3 other critical items you need, where our supply is at the mercy of the Chinese government. This is both shocking and terrifying, as you're going to see. Look, it's not my intention to scare you, but if the last 3 years have taught you anything, isn't it that you need to understand all the different threats facing you and your family? The amount of crises is spiraling out of control, and as I'm about to show you, it all points to one thing, this economic super collapse I'm predicting. Look around you. Our whole system is completely out of whack. I believe this total system failure explains almost everything you're seeing in the news that otherwise seems unrelated, from contested elections, to the mental health crisis and shootings, to shaky housing prices, to pilot shortages on airlines, to the baby formula shortage, to riots over Supreme Court decisions, to rising prices at the pump, and more, all at once. They're all symptoms of a systemic collapse underway right now, one that could end the American economy as we know it within the next 6 to 12 months. Now, I don't think anyone wants to think about what our lives might look like without feeling safe walking down the street, or having access to public air transportation, or formula to feed our babies, or the most basic food items we're all used to eating, let alone not being able to retire comfortably. But I hope you can see there's a much larger problem here than what you're being led to believe. Not many people in the world truly understand how vulnerable America really is. And that vulnerability starts with our supply chains. We just talked about 3 of them, food, energy, and medicine, but it's far bigger than that. Notice I didn't say supply chain, but rather supply chains. That's because every industry on the planet, farming, $11.3 trillion, banking, $7.5 trillion, healthcare, $6.9 trillion, oil and gas, $6.8 trillion, tech, $5.2 trillion. They all have their own supply chain. And within each of those supply chains is another supply chain and another and so on. Here's a simplified visual to see how complicated this is. Don't worry if it's confusing, that's the point. But when people talk about our supply chain, what they're really talking about is a supply chain of supply chains to the nth degree. Stop thinking of this as an American supply chain or Chinese supply chain, because the whole thing is global. That's why lockdowns over a single case of COVID in Shanghai can cause immeasurable damage to our economy here. In fact, according to Bloomberg, China's lockdowns have already cost our economy at least $46 billion a month. For all I know, it's possible that's exactly what they want, because they figure they own us, and that our country is more strategically dependent on them than they are to us. Either way, the point is you have to think of the world supply chain as a web of millions of interconnected supply chains, including every aspect of our economy, food, energy, medicine, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. And what I fear could happen is akin to something engineers refer to as a single point of failure. What that means is this: any part of the system that fails will bring down the entire system. In other words, if one of our supply chains or one of another country's supply chains that we rely on collapse, it could cause an unprecedented economic super collapse on a global scale. And that's how we could end up with this $85 trillion economic super collapse I'm predicting. $85 trillion being the value of the global economy. Because remember, our current supply chain is interconnected on a global scale. And if there is a single point of failure, the whole system is going to come collapsing down. Farming, banking, healthcare, oil and gas, tech, and so on. This isn't the first time I've warned Americans about this before. On May 11, 2020, I told my followers, the economy will not return to normal for years. There are serious constraints on supply. I issued another warning about my research on November 24th, 2021. The supply chain difficulties will certainly grow worse. The remedies will take years and sometimes decades to implement. And yet another in 2022. Don't believe the happy talk about a temporary supply chain crisis. I'll say that again. The crisis will last for years with predictable negative effects on economic growth. But now things are even worse than ever before. And I fear this economic super collapse could hit American soil in the next 6 to 12 months. So this may be my last and final warning before it's too late. It's why I'm warning people around me it's only a matter of time before the world economy comes crashing down. Because when you talk about risk of catastrophic collapse, the risk increases with the size of scale. Look, whether you decide to listen to me today about how to prepare, whether or not you decide to get access to the information in this envelope, that's up to you. It's a free country. You can do what you want. You can even pretend you never heard me tell you any of this. But just know, Joe Biden certainly isn't going to come to your rescue. Take a look at this 9-second clip from the president.
When do you think things will get back to normal?
When do I think things will get back to normal? But my hope is by this time next year, we're going to be back to normal.
That clip was taken over 18 months ago. It's up to you what you believe, but I can't bury my head in the sand and ignore all the facts, and the facts couldn't be more clear. So in just a moment, I'm going to explain how you can get access to this information inside the envelope as part of my super collapse preparation package. And I'm going to talk about what to do to protect and even grow your wealth. Look, please understand, it brings me no joy to say this, and I hope the worst of what I'm warning of never comes to pass. But there's only one potential solution to this crisis, and it's going to take years. Recently, I spoke to a very well-informed CEO of a major corporation, and I asked him point blank, I said, your company must be looking ahead at some possible solution. Is there anything you can share? Well, I'm going to tell you the same thing he told me. He said, Jim, you have to understand that it took us 30 years to build these supply chains. We blew it up in 3 years, beginning in 2018, and you can't put it back together. But there is one thing we can do. It's not a quick fix, but it's our best and most sensible option. Our only way out is to build a new supply chain that eliminates the bad actors. We can't continue to allow our enemies like China or Russia or Iran to threaten consumers here on American soil. As the Wall Street Journal wrote, Russia's lengthening war with Ukraine will lead to a near doubling of inflation rates in rich countries. It's why the New York Times wrote, this is what happens when globalization breaks down. And why Barron's wrote, secure U.S. supply chains with allies and move out of China. Unfortunately, this solution could take years or even a decade to fully implement. And that CEO told me it will take at least 10 years to reconstruct the supply chains if we don't want to do it with China and globalization. But whether you realize it or not, that's the bet we're making as a nation. It's happening now. And when the dust settles, we're either going to have rolled out this new supply chain before a worst-case scenario happens, or we're going to face whatever lies ahead from this $85 trillion economic super collapse. Now, maybe you're wondering how bad things could really get. Let me answer that question with another question. Do you remember your life at the beginning of the pandemic? Despite all of our freedoms we all hold so dear, an unelected official with the ear of the president recommended immediate lockdowns, and suddenly we heard demands like shelter in place or stay at home, backed up by the threat of arrest. Large swaths of the economy ground to a halt. Looting took over our towns and cities. Because so many businesses were shut down, people were emboldened to take to the streets. Let me jog your memory with this colorful description. Police in Washington, D.C. fired off flashbangs while helicopters with U.S. Army markings buzzed the crowds at low altitudes. That was just an excerpt from one article. Now, I'm not saying we're going to see another round of lockdowns, because by now I hope our leaders recognize that lockdowns don't work. But if most Americans don't have access to enough food, water, or other necessary supplies, do you really believe our streets and our businesses won't see more violence? It's why gun sales keep hitting all-time highs as more and more Americans prepare for whatever lies ahead. And while I hope the worst of what I'm warning in my urgent new book never comes to pass, I don't suggest you rely on hope to protect yourself and your family. I'm certainly not. Here's how I'm ensuring my family's well-being. First, I would suggest stocking up on essentials, just like I've done. I have a fully finished area in the basement of one of my properties, the address of which I keep totally private. It provides me with a warehousing area for months' worth of canned foods and other non-perishable provisions. That's important. Don't stop with a 3-day supply like the CDC recommends. Make sure you have enough water, basic food, and toiletries to last at least 3 months. and keep them in a safe area where they can sit without damage or spoiling. I would also recommend buying several large capacity freezers. I already have 3 and I may continue purchasing more. If you have the means, consider installing alternate energy solutions in case of a worst case scenario. I've already installed the largest non-commercial solar power system in New England on my property. If you can, have alternative sources of power generation on your property. I've also dug 3 wells, planted abundant gardens, and built a significant greenhouse. But whatever you decide, do recognize that none of it will matter if you're not getting accurate information about what to expect in the coming days. Like I said, to be able to make the right decisions during a crisis, you need to lean on someone. So if that's not me, you should find another well-connected person you can trust, ideally someone who's previously held a position of power in our government. But if you want to learn what's inside this envelope and see what I know, right now is your chance. See, I've gone ahead and published this information I'm holding here in this envelope inside my newest book. It has brand new proof of the unfolding situation and inside level details on how it will play out. But today I'm letting you claim a copy. Take action to claim your copy and you'll be able to prepare ahead of this potential $85 trillion economic super collapse. The book is called Sold Out: How Broken Supply Chains, Surging Inflation, and Political Instability Will Sink the Global Economy. And it's the only way to get access to this information flow I'm sharing with my readers and my family before it's too late. That's because unlike other ex-government insiders who try to keep regular Americans in the dark, I actually share my warnings in my books, like this newest one here. I've done it before many times over the past so that my readers could prepare before my warnings became reality. For instance, in Aftermath 2019, I warned of economic devastation that could ensue from a pandemic and social unrest before most people had ever heard about COVID. I explained how something unforeseen like the pandemic could start a chain reaction, leading to the type of super collapse that's now underway. Just look at what I wrote beginning on page 290 of that book. And again, this was a year before COVID spread around the world. Other catalysts include pandemic. A catalyst triggers the cascade as one system failure causes another, and the breakdown becomes widespread to the point of paralysis. What happened? You know the story. The pandemic hit. It triggered lockdowns and massive government spending, which triggered stocks crashing 34% over the following months. Political divisions over vaccines and masks, and the rampant inflation we see today. Look, I'm not saying I have a crystal ball because I don't, but I know having a head start on these big events allowed me to personally prepare my family. So if you want the same details I'm sharing with my family, I've come up with a way to claim a copy of my book, Sold Out, as part of this super collapse preparation package. That way you don't have to go online and purchase it from my publisher. Plus, when you get my super collapse preparation package, as I'll explain in a moment, you'll also get lots of other strategic benefits, starting with an exclusive interview, Sold Out: Preparing for the Collapse. This in-depth, subscribers-only interview breaks down all the chilling predictions, proof, and preparation steps I've outlined inside my urgent new book. Because of how urgent the situation is, I recorded this detailed video interview so you can immediately get to preparing your family for whatever lies ahead. And that's just one of many strategic benefits you'll get as part of my Super Collapse preparation package, because you'll also get Urgent Preparation Report number 1. Buy this asset after securing your family's food and energy. As the economy collapses and the shelves are bare, the government will respond by printing even more money. When it does, the value of the dollar will be destroyed through inflation. But 5,000 years of history proves that one item, gold, outlasts every other currency as a form of money. And I believe that economic collapse occurring right now will send gold skyrocketing over the next 6 months. That's why I'll send you my urgent report called The Perfect Physical Gold Portfolio. Everything you need to know about buying the right kind of physical gold as part of my Super Collapse preparation package. You'll find everything you need to know about investing in gold before the price blasts through the ceiling, including: is gold safe to invest in? How much should I invest in precious metals? What metals should I buy and what should I avoid? What are the best places to buy gold and other precious metals? What are the safest ways to store gold to avoid theft or government confiscation? And much more. Plus, I'll also send you Urgent Preparation Report number 2, my Biden Bucks Protection Plan. I haven't mentioned it yet, but during my research, I came across a troubling executive order that President Biden just signed. See, every time there's an economic crisis, the government responds with massive new programs to try and control the economy and its citizens. In 2008, it was bailouts of big banks and new government agencies to regulate the financial industry. This time it will be much worse. I've uncovered a plan for U.S. government cryptocurrency I call Biden Bucks that I believe the government will unveil during this economic collapse to control your money and manage the societal fallout. By the time this program is announced, it will be nearly impossible for everyday Americans like you to protect their wealth and keep their privacy, which is why I've created another urgent report to get you prepared ahead of time. Inside this new report, you'll get step-by-step details on what these Biden Bucks are, why they'll be used during this collapse, and how to outsmart this sinister program by creating, 1, an off-the-grid fortune, secure $1.1 million in wealth inside a soda can safe. 2, saving your freedoms, have liquidity and spendable wealth without using Biden Bucks. And 3, growing your personal wealth. You'll get possible investment upside as events unfold. And 4, ensuring you maintain your wealth regardless of external conditions. Building your own off-the-grid portfolio now will protect you from the government surveillance state coming during the economic super collapse. Biden Bucks testing is underway. The digital dollar could be rolled out soon. Before it's too late, make sure to protect yourself and your retirement savings. You'll find everything you need in this urgent report as part of my super collapse preparation package. But that's not all, because you'll also get urgent preparation report number 3. Secure this secret off-the-grid asset. You see, I've learned of another little appreciated asset that's a liquid form of wealth. It can't be tracked or traced. It's completely legal and easy to find if you know where to look. Over time, its value has steadily grown, but very few people know anything about its investment potential. You're about to be one of the few. I believe you must include this secret asset in any off-the-grid portfolio. I tell you exactly what it is and how to get it in another urgent report. America's secret currency. Get in on the ultimate off-the-grid asset. If you want to keep your wealth hidden away from the government's prying eyes, you'll want to read this report first. Fact is, if you get my super crisis preparation package, you're about to join an elite group of people who know the truth about this potentially catastrophic event and who are ready to prepare and even profit from the turmoil. You see, everything you've seen today was first shared with a small private circle of citizens. Every month, I take what I've learned from my contacts and connections in the intelligence and global finance communities, and I write it all up in a private issue of a newsletter I call Strategic Intelligence. Because of my contacts and experience, I have access to certain information that most people outside our own government don't know. And I share every detail with my private circle of strategic intelligence readers. But even better than that, I show them how to potentially profit from these events. In a moment, I'll show how you can join them. Because readers of strategic intelligence will get access to this entire super collapse preparation package for free. I'll give you the details soon. But first, there's one more report I want to tell you about that you're also going to get with this package. And this one could be the most valuable of all. Urgent Preparation Report number 4. Defend your family's physical safety. Unfortunately, I predict things are about to get even uglier in our country. The coming super collapse will bring unrest in a way we haven't seen in more than 50 years, or maybe ever. When that happens, simply having food or protecting your money won't be enough. You may need to save your family and property too. That's why I reached out to a colleague and friend, Jason Hansen. Like me, Jason formerly worked with the CIA. He was an operative for them. He won the CIA Exceptional Performance Award not once, but twice. That's about all I'm allowed to say about his past experience, if you catch my meaning. These days, Jason teaches no-holds-barred defense techniques to celebrities, top business executives, and other high-profile targets. He's a mild-mannered, unassuming guy. You'd like him. But when the stuff hits the fan, Jason is positively lethal. If you're ever in a crisis, you want someone like him on your side. That's why I asked Jason if he would develop a personal survival guide for the storm that's brewing. And what he delivered exceeded all my expectations. Jason created a full survival guide called How to Make Your Home Your Personal Fortress. He held nothing back. In this uncensored guide, you'll discover pro-defense techniques like how to implement the CIA's 4 concentric rings of defense to make your home hell on earth for an intruder. How and why to safely hide a firearm on every level of your house. The simple tool that turns your front door into an impenetrable barrier. Then, do you have this very common door lock? If so, change it immediately. You'll see why in your new report. It's important. Don't believe you can afford your own panic room? Think again. He shows you how to build and equip a devastating defense HQ inside your home for just a few $100. Jason also included the 6 steps to survive a societal level event that lasts weeks or months. He even shows you a secret for sourcing top quality survival food for much less than you're paying now. One of my personal favorite chapters is when Jason reveals covert spy secrets for moving undetected at night. With these secrets, you will confidently walk inner city streets or any other unfamiliar environment. Finally, Jason shares the most important information of all: how to defend your family and property against multiple intruders. This section gets intense, but there's nothing nice about facing a group of thugs who want to do your family harm. Once someone has entered your home, they've abandoned any expectation of mercy. And with the techniques Jason shows you here, they'll regret ever crossing your property line immediately. These are just a few of the spy-level secrets in how to make your home your personal fortress. Under Jason's guidance, you and your loved ones will never be victims. And that's why I'm including the How to Make Your Home Your Personal Fortress report as part of my Super Collapse preparation package today. Again, when you join Strategic Intelligence, you'll get access to my complete preparation package, including free, a hard copy of my brand new, sold out, How Broken Supply Chains, Surging Inflation, and Political Instability Will Sink the Global Economy. Free, sold out, the Preparation Bootcamp video interview. Access to my weekly Strategic Intelligence newswire, 12 months, 12 issues, of my private Jim Rickards Strategic Intelligence dossiers, plus free preparation report number 1, the perfect physical gold portfolio, everything you need to know about buying the right kind of physical gold. Free preparation report number 2, your Biden Bucks protection plan. Free preparation report number 3, America's secret currency, get in on the ultimate off-the-grid asset. Free preparation report number 4, How to Make Your Home Your Personal Fortress by former CIA officer Jason Hansen. Your sold-out video interview, plus all 4 free preparation reports, will be waiting in your inbox just minutes from now. And your first intelligence newswire and monthly dossier will come soon after. So let's do this. Say yes to my invitation to join my private circle of monthly Strategic Intelligence readers. I request a small fee to join. It helps cover my time and the expense of mailing each monthly dossier. It's valued at $299 a year, which is a bargain for the level of insight you'll gain and the potential profits you'll enjoy. After all, my speaking fee at events is typically $25,000, and my clients don't blink an eye. They know what they'll get from what I have to share will far outpace that investment. But $299 is not what I'm going to ask you to pay today. The situation is urgent, and I don't want there to be any reason you won't have access to the information you and your family need now. So effective immediately, I'm cutting that price by over 80%. Today, I'd like to offer you a full year, 12-issue subscription to my Strategic Intelligence newsletter for just $49. That's an 84% discount. Of course, if at any time during the first 6 months you feel Strategic Intelligence is not worth many times what you paid, just request a full refund and I'll be happy to oblige. Plus, you keep all your Strategic Intelligence dossiers and all 4 of your preparation reports, even if you refund. No questions asked, no fine print. But there's one final thing. You must act now. Think back over the last 3 years. There are a few lessons that are very clear from recent history. First, that a crisis catches most people by surprise and unprepared. Second, that during the crisis, the flow of information is controlled by the government and elites. You know what I've told you today is exactly the kind of information the elites love to shut down. This crisis could hit even sooner than I think. My estimate is within the next 6 months, but it could come next month. Timing the crisis isn't what you should be focused on. Being prepared as soon as humanly possible is. By the time it hits, it will be too late, and this message will likely have been censored. Meanwhile, I've done everything in my power to give you a risk-free way to test out everything I prepare for you for the first 6 months. So please, accept my personal invitation now. You have to decide if you'll be prepared and spared or hoping for a miracle. Will you become a victim of the downfall of the American economy, or are you a person of action? Will you choose to win while others lose by increasing your personal safety, freedom, power, and wealth? Right now, there's a button under this presentation. It says Next Step. Go ahead and press that button now, please. When you do, you'll be taken to a secure, encrypted reservation page. There you can tell me exactly where to send your copy of my new book, the video interview, the free reports, and your membership details. Remember, your first 6 months are completely risk-free. You can cancel for a full refund anytime in the first 6 months, and you keep all your Strategic Intelligence issues and all 4 preparation reports no matter what. Please press the button below now, and I'll meet you on the other side. Thank you for spending this time with me today. For Strategic Intelligence, I'm Jim Rickards. Press the button below to claim everything I've outlined for you. Thank you.